There's an island in the Canadian Arctic called King William, a low, flat, frozen place. Nothing grows there. Almost no one goes there. But on a cold stone cairn on its western shore, there is a note, handwritten, folded into a rusted tin cylinder. It was left there in April of 1848, and whoever left it was already dying. The note speaks of two ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, abandoned in the ice. It speaks of a commander, Sir John Franklin, dead since June of the year before. It speaks of 9 officers and 15 men already perished. And it says, the survivors, 105 of them, are now walking south, across the ice, toward the mainland. None of them made it. To understand what happened, you have to go back 3 years, to the summer of 1845. London, the greatest empire on earth, an empire that ruled a quarter of the world, but still did not rule the Arctic. For 300 years, Britain had been trying to find a sea route over the top of the world, a northwest passage, a shortcut to the riches of the East. Hundreds had tried, many had died. By 1845, the Admiralty believed one final expedition could finish it forever, and they had the man to lead it. His name was Sir John Franklin, 59 years old, already a legend. A veteran of 3 Arctic expeditions, a knight of the realm, a man who had stared into the white void before and come back alive. He wasn't the Admiralty's first choice. Other officers had been offered the command and declined. Franklin asked for it himself. His wife, Lady Jane, later said she pushed him. She did not want him to die ashore, forgotten, an old man in a chair. She got her wish. The ships they gave him were the most advanced polar vessels ever built. HMS Erebus, HMS Terror. Hulls reinforced with iron plating, steam engines pulled from London railway locomotives and dropped into their bellies. 3 years of provisions, 8,000 tins of preserved food, a library of over 1,000 books, china plates, silver cutlery, engraved with each officer's initials. If any ships could survive the ice, it was these 2. They sailed from Greenhithe on the 19th of May, 1845. Crowds on the docks, bands playing, newspapers calling it the greatest exploration fleet ever assembled. A dove, they say, landed on one of the masts as they left the harbor. Witnesses called it a good omen. 2 months later, in July, the ships anchored in Baffin Bay. They met with 2 British whaling vessels. The officers shared a meal. They exchanged letters to be carried home. Then the Erebus and Terror sailed west, into Lancaster Sound. That was the last time anyone saw them alive. A year passed. No word. No one was alarmed. Arctic expeditions were supposed to be gone for years. Another year passed. Still nothing. By 1848, 3 years after departure, Lady Jane Franklin began to panic. She wrote to the Admiralty. She wrote to the Prime Minister. She wrote to the President of the United States. And slowly, Britain began to understand. Something had gone terribly wrong. Over the next decade, more than 30 ships would be sent looking for Franklin. Several of them became trapped in the ice themselves. Men died searching for men who were already dead. It became the largest rescue operation in history. And for 5 long years, it found almost nothing. Then, in the summer of 1850, a search party landed on Beechey Island, a small, rocky outcrop in the Canadian Arctic. They found the remains of Franklin's first winter camp. Debris, tin cans, scraps of clothing, and 3 graves. Wooden headboards. The names: John Torrington, John Hartnell, William Brain. All 3 had died in the winter of 1846. They were the first of Franklin's men to fall. Torrington was 20 years old. He was the youngest, a stoker, the man who fed the engines. He died on the 2nd of January, and his body is still there, preserved in the permafrost of Beechey Island. His face, still intact, after 180 years. But there was no message at the camp. No note saying where the expedition had gone next. No cairn with documents. Nothing. And that silence was itself a warning. 9 more years passed. Then, in 1859, a search expedition led by Francis McClintock finally reached King William Island. And there, they found it. A metal cylinder, buried under a cairn of stones, near a place called Victory Point. The first part of the note was dated May 1847. Brief, routine, all was well. Sir John Franklin commanded the expedition. But someone had written a second message in the margins, almost a year later. This message was frantic. It said the ships had been abandoned. It said Franklin was dead. It said 24 men had already perished, and that the survivors, 105 of them, were marching south. The final date on the note was April 25, 1848. From that day on, they vanished from history. What happened next, the British did not want to hear. Inuit hunters across King William Island had stories. They had seen the men. They had seen what had become of them. They described starving white men walking south, collapsing in the snow, dragging sledges loaded with silver cutlery and books. They described a large tent on the ice, with the bodies of 30 or more men inside. And they described bones, broken open, cut marks, signs that the living had eaten the dead. When this reached London, Britain refused to believe it. The explorer John Ray, who brought these accounts home, was publicly destroyed for repeating them. Charles Dickens himself wrote furious essays calling the Inuit liars. Englishmen did not eat each other. That was the story Britain needed. In 1981, forensic scientists examined bones recovered from King William Island. The bones showed cut marks consistent with butchery, breaks consistent with boiling to extract marrow. The Inuit had been telling the truth for over a century. No one had listened. The ships themselves remained lost for another 150 years. Then, in September of 2014, a Canadian research team, guided by Inuit oral tradition, located HMS Erebus, sitting upright in shallow water off the south coast of King William Island. 2 years later, in 2016, HMS Terror was found in an inlet called Terror Bay, almost perfectly preserved, plates still on the mess table, glass bottles still sealed, a ship frozen in time on the floor of the Arctic Sea. But even now, we do not know exactly what killed them. Lead poisoning from the tinned food? Possibly. Botulism from poorly sealed cans? Also possible. Scurvy? Almost certainly by the end. The truth is probably all of these things, combined with cold, exhaustion, and despair. Sir John Franklin's body has never been found. Neither have the remains of the last survivors. The men who walked south, dragging their silverware, their books, their dying comrades. Somewhere on the tundra of northern Canada, beneath the snow, beneath a century and a half of silence, they are still there. 129 men sailed from England in 1845. Not one of them came back. If you want to hear more stories like this one, subscribe.